So it is 6 o'clock, so good evening, everyone. So I will call this regular meeting of the Village of Fundy Albert Council for February 6th, 2024 to order. Just a point to note is that Councillor Elkin is not available this evening, so she's out of the country. And we do have Councillor Ward Russell, who is participating virtually. So although you won't be able to see her, you will be able to hear her. So the first item on the agenda is the adoption of the agenda. So the agenda for this evening's meeting was circulated in advance. I would propose the addition of item number 8G, a request from the Albert County Chamber of Commerce. Item 11E, which is a resolution relating to the disposition of land, as well as item number 12, which is public comments and statements, which is usually the case during our meetings. This would make the closed session item number 13 and the adjournment item number 14. Are there any other proposed additions to the agenda? If not, do all councillors consent to the addition of the items to the agenda? There being no objection or all in favor, I will accept a motion to adopt the agenda as amended. So moved by Councillor Jonas, seconded by Councillor Arrow. Any questions on the motion? If not, all in favor signify by stating aye. Aye. And Councillor Ward Russell raised her hand, so she consents. So the motion is adopted unanimously. Number 3 on the agenda is conflicts of interest declarations. Are there any conflicts of interest to declare in relation to the items on the agenda this evening? There being none, we'll proceed to item number 4, which is the adoption of previous minutes. So we have the following minutes to approve this evening. Those of the special meeting on December 23rd, 2023, the regular meeting on January 9th, 2024, the committee of the whole meeting on January 16th, 2024, and the special meeting on February 1st, 2024. So at our January 9th regular meeting, the minutes of the special meeting of December 23rd, 2023 were approved in error. The contents of the minutes were incorrect. In order to rectify this, I would require a motion to rescind the previous motion that was adopted to accept the minutes of the December 23rd, 2023 meeting that were adopted on January 9th. May I have a motion to rescind that, please? So moved by Councillor Coates, seconded by Councillor Land. Any questions on the motion? They were wrong. They were the wrong minutes entirely. They were a duplicate of another date. They believe the 27th, and no one caught it, including myself. So the minutes for the December 23rd minutes were it was the special meeting where we have the appointment of our new acting CEO.
So the one that we thought was the 23rd was the 27th?
Was a duplicate of the 27th.
Okay.
Exactly. Any other questions? If not, I'll accept the motion to adopt the December 23rd, 2023 as moved. Or, yeah, it's been moved and seconded. All in favor of the motion signify by stating aye. Opposed, if any? Motion's carried unanimously. And the correct minutes were circulated in advance of this meeting. So I'll now accept the motion to adopt the minutes of the December 23rd, 2023 meeting as circulated. So moved by Councillor Arrow, seconded by Councillor Jones. Any questions on the motion? Not, all in favor signify by stating aye. And Councillor Ward Russell raises her hand. Opposed, if any? The motion's carried unanimously. So the draft minutes of the Committee of the Whole meeting on January 16th, 2024 were circulated in advance of this meeting. Oh, sorry, we didn't do the January 9th. I get a little carried away. So the draft minutes of the regular meeting on January 9th, 2024 were circulated in advance of the meetings. Were there any errors or omissions to report?
Well, I'd like to, I'm not sure if it's an error or an omission, but maybe clarification or a correction for the record.
Mhm.
And it's in section 8, which I think is page 3.
Mhm.
And it with concerns the presentation that Miss Nancy Land gave about Literacy Express,
Mhm.
which all that's true. But in here it says that she said that the Literacy Express program had been under the umbrella of the Hillsborough Rec Council for the last 10 years. It's possible she said that, I'm not sure.
Mhm.
But as you yourself, Mayor, you gave a report that indicated that it's really more like, if I understand correctly, since 2021.
Correct.
That it's so, it's a tricky bit here, that it's possible she said that, I'm not sure.
Yeah,
I didn't go back to check.
yeah, I looked back on the video, so it is what was said.
So I don't know if we need to, we record what's said, but we wouldn't want to have a reader in the future take this as fact.
Correct. So we
Right.
should make a note that there's been a correction proposed. And that's to reflect that it's been under the Hillsborough Rec Council since 2020. Correct.
Other than that, everything's fine.
Thank you. So we'll amend the minutes accordingly. So any other questions, or if not, I'll accept a motion to adopt the amended minutes as presented. So moved by Councillor Lamb, seconded by Councillor Arrow. Any questions on the motion? If not, all in favor signify by stating aye. Opposed, if any? The motion's carried unanimously. The draft minutes of the Committee of the Whole meeting on January 16th, 2024 were circulated in advance of the meeting. Are there any errors or omissions to report? If not, I'll accept the motion to adopt the minutes as circulated. So moved by Councillor Ward Russell, seconded by Councillor Coates. Any questions on the motion? If not, all in favor signify by stating aye. Opposed, if any? The motion's adopted unanimously. The last set of minutes are the draft minutes of the special meeting on February 1st, 2024 were circulated in advance of the meeting. Are there any errors or omissions to report? If not, I'll accept a motion to adopt the minutes as circulated. So moved by Councillor Jonah, seconded by Councillor Lamb. Any questions on the motion? If not, all in favor signify by stating aye. Opposed, if any? Motion's carried unanimously. Number 5 on the agenda is a consent agenda. There are no consent agenda items for this evening's meeting. So we'll move on to item number 6. There are no registered, which is the public and administrative presentations. There are no registered 5-minute presentations for the meeting. Councillor Land, would you mind going and picking up that sheet to see if there's any registered 2-minute presentations, please? Anything on the sheet? No, there are no 2-minute presentations. Thank you very much. Thank you. So we'll move on to item number 7, which is reports and recommendations from committees and private meetings. There are no recommendations from committees and private meetings to report. So we'll move on to item number 8, which is reports from administration. So the first item is the CAO report. The CAO's report was circulated to members of council. So I'll now ask our CAO to provide an overview if you have anything to provide, any highlights.
I will, for the benefit, I think, of the recording, but normally the presentation of the CAO report is at the community of the whole. But since there has been there hasn't been reporting in a long time, and I know that the people around this table were looking for some sort of an update. So I put together some information, but again, the committee of whole is the opportunity for the directors to be able to respond to some questions, and they are not here today. So this really is just a quick overview. From the previous meetings, there were a couple of items, investigation and looking into the Hillsborough Recreational Council and Right to Information and Protection of Privacy Act. Those two are ongoing. I haven't finished reports on those yet, but they are being worked on. There was a question from a resident, an Airbnb owner, asking for the solid waste collection to be looked at. Again, that is under Alma bylaw number 79 right now, and that bylaw still stands. So until such time that the bylaws are being reviewed, it is compliant. I will, however, say that I will be providing a update to council at the next meeting of a list of the bylaws, and maybe we can put together an action plan of which ones and prioritize which ones should be looked at and worked on, so that we have some sort of a plan moving forward. There have been a few complaints that are being worked on. One was a raw sewage one in Riverside Albert that has been referred to the Department of Environment, and they're sending out an investigator, so we should have a report on that. There was some concern that Stiles Road in Riverside Albert wasn't being plowed. We've looked into that. The solution right now, if there's a little bit of a drop in the road, solution is that they will plow up to where that drop is, and then our crew will go in and do the rest of it until such time that we can make the repairs in spring. And BTI will certainly plow and sand the entire, they'll sand the entire thing and plow up until the point where that dip is. There is also unsightly premises complaint that is ongoing, and we are trying to figure out next steps with the property owners. There are definitely three tenders that are requests for proposals that are being worked on. So the branding and website one for the village itself is closing on February 13th. The Shoreline Trail has a RFP that's been posted, and it closes on February 28th. And we are working on the one for the Riverside Albert fire truck, and that is part of the agenda later on, so I will leave it to that decision. And then there's a fourth one that we are still gathering information and trying to write the tender contract for, and that's paving on Pound Hill, which is a collaboration, I guess, with DTI. We've received some funding that we need to put to good use on that. A good news story. We were successful in our application for a grant with the Atlantic Canada Opportunities Agency, which is a COA. So we did receive funding to purchase generators for our warming centers, one at the Alma Activity Center and one at Hillsborough. I understand there was a third request for Lower Coverdale. Unfortunately, because the warming center didn't exist at the time, the COA funds for Fiona recovery couldn't go to that. So we did get the two. Work has commenced on the activity center here in Alma for the electrical to be able to support the new generator, and the generators have been ordered and should arrive by the end of February. So we're happy to be partnering with ACOA on that one, and we were allowed to announce that as of February 1st. So we are kind of keeping that a little bit under wraps until we got to that deadline. The Alma temporary water, we are planning for the temporary water lines to go into the village in hopefully May or early June. So we are going to be meeting with the park next week in order to work on an agreement, and we are sourcing all of the equipment that's necessary in order to put the temporary line in. So that should be something that we'd like to get very much ahead of time before the busy season starts in the village. There was the Alma wastewater lagoon has had some work done on it. There was an audit done on that lagoon, and they had identified a series of deficiencies that needed to be addressed, and I'm happy to report that all but 4 of those outstanding issues have been completed, and the last 4 were getting done before the April 11th deadline, when we need to actually get that certificate to operate back renewed again. As well, there's a study that needs to go with that certificate to operate, and Globe is working on that study, and we're expected to see that report by mid-February. The Alma storm drains upgrade that was done on the main street here, the work was complete, and an inspection was done on January 23rd. The scope of the work involved the new catch basin and replacing the storm pipe and a catch basin. There are some deficiencies that have been identified as a result of that project, and we're just waiting for a report to come back from Globe on exactly what the deficiencies and what the action plan is to correct those deficiencies. The phase 1 of the water exploration, so that's our big project here for the water in Alma. Everyone keeps asking about the 72-hour test, and the test showed that the water quality is good, apart from a little bit of turbidity, so treatment will be required. And the recommended flow rate that they're getting is 100 gallons per minute, so they're quite happy with that. There will be the treatment that they're looking at for turbidity could be as simple as filtration. And the type of the treatment will depend on the design of the rest of the system. So they're working on the design of that with the design of the whole project itself. And we are in the process of meeting with landowners to secure the easement requirements that we have. And consultations with Indigenous groups has been completed. And we did meet with Irving as well as part of the landowners. And Irving will be preparing an interim agreement that'll go in place until the final drawings are done, at which point they will have a permanent agreement in place. And then once we get all of those landowner agreements, we'll be able to go to the Capital Borrowing Board, and the project is still targeted to start construction in the summer. And with Englobe, is working on their tender packages, so that construction can start in the summer. The Riverside Albert Water Treatment Plant, they're working on a list of, so EXP is the company that's doing that for us, working with suppliers to evaluate options for the replacement filtration equipment. They will also be getting a quote for some of the ultraviolet disinfection that is required to supplement their existing chlorination system. However, the disinfection part wasn't part of the initial project, so as soon as we get a quote from them, we'll be able to determine where we can fit that into our current budget. EXP also met on site with our Director of Operations to review the existing plant and evaluated how the new equipment will be installed with the existing equipment. And they are moving ahead with the tender package to supply and install all of the new equipment. And we will have an opportunity to review that before posting. There is a Hillsborough new production well, so the preliminary action plan to source the water exploration in Hillsborough. We did receive a proposal for that, and the updated budget doesn't cover the full amount. So we are asking them to break it into smaller pieces to see what we can accomplish this year and what we may have to put off to next year on that particular project. And there is a Hillsborough water audit. Several deficiencies were reported, including the need to clean up the well building, and there were some alarms that needed to be required to be reported. So and a faulty chlorinator. So Public Works is currently going through all of the stock parts that are involved in that in the building and cleaning up everything and seeing what is usable and what needs to be discarded. There is now a new chlorination unit, and it should be installed within the next week. The Public Works, somebody was asking at one point about the vehicle, the Ford F-550 3-ton truck. It's out of service because of a defective light module, and the part is still under back order. And apparently there's a long list of people that are waiting to get the part once the back order gets filled. So where we stand in that list, we're not quite sure. We can use the vehicle for some little things in and around, you know, where the part or the truck is. When they put the plow on it, apparently they can then use the truck, but they're very, very limited in what they're using it in. The class 3 licensing requirement was another thing that came up with our Public Works team. So currently there's 3 employees that are studying for their class 3 license. They have completed the medical portion of it, and they're just studying for the written test. So we should see that coming soon. And all employees were interested in the utility certification. So the paperwork has been filled out for all of them to take that, and it's the province that then comes in and determines who has the right amount of hours and that sort of thing in order to move forward with their certification. But we should see some more people in that group to be able to go out and do the testing of our water, which is in all of our communities. Lastly, on that one, we do have circular materials. So on November 4th, recyclables will no longer be collected as part by the province. And for those who opted in, which we were one of them, starting in May, we will be receiving a subsidy from all municipal households, including the old LSDs. But there was a group of CAOs that were concerned that there's a gap in time between when the contract for collecting the recyclables started by the province and when a lot of the contracts in the existing communities expired. And if any of the municipalities had to go out and tender anything for a short term of 2 or 3 months, the charges would probably be astronomical. So with the approval of council, and this will be something that will probably come at our next meeting, Eco 360 is going to start a tender in the spring of this year so that they can have collection being done as every community, as every LSDs lose their contract, as their contracts expire, they will then bring them on board to this new one until everything is in place in spring. So they will be providing a statement for approval of all councils so that it would be consistent across the board. And they've asked for some information that we can provide to them so that we can, so they can understand what all of the contracts look like and when they're expiring and that sort of thing. So I will be coming back to council next meeting with more information on that. And there is something new that just came across my desk today, and there is the Union for the Municipalities of New Brunswick Advocacy Days. And it'll be March 21st and 22nd in Fredericton. And it's an opportunity for members to engage directly with MLAs, ministers, and party leaders, and working collaboratively towards key priorities. So the theme this year is growing together, strong communities for a strong province. And they invite each of the municipalities to send a maximum of 2 representatives to the conference. So I'm putting that out there to see if there was any interest of council. That's
quite a bit.
Again, I know that there was a thirst for information. I was trying to get just that there's a lot going on and a lot is happening, even though it may not have been reported, but everybody's been working very hard. So I wanted to make sure that you at least have some, a little bit that, you know, things are being handled.
Well, thank you very much. It was a very thorough report.
Could I-
Any questions? Yeah, there's an opportunity to ask questions.
In just 2 areas there, Linda, on the win for the ACOA grant for generators, that is good news. We'd heard that was coming from before. What came as a surprise to me in your report is that the generators had been ordered. Couple of questions. One is who spec'd the generators? Because I didn't even think that the spec, which we would have presumably, and that's my second question about generators, the tendering. It's possible that the generator in the Hillsborough Kiwanis Club, it's a simple direct replacement for whatever was there, replacing what's in this. I believe that the situation here is considerably more not straightforward. That the generator here was deemed by many to be not fit for purpose, not only its ability to operate, but even the voltage, the sizing of it. I was surprised that we'd even actually decided what size generator we need. And then was it tendered?
I will have to get back to you. I'll have to find that out and return back with an answer. I don't, if I had the other directors here, we maybe.
Yeah, so I think that's worth looking into, especially as I said, the Alma generator, and making sure that whatever that we're ordering and purchasing is exactly, not only can we afford it, but it's fit for purpose for here.
Right.
The second one is concerning the so-called phase 2 water for Alma. Which is also, it's great news that phase 1 has basically come to a conclusion and we're starting in the phase 2. I remember in the phase 2 discussions for information sessions that Engel was giving us, they talked about how the phase 2 would actually be phased. There would be sub-phases. So for instance, the first part would be hooking up the new wells to the existing distribution system of the existing well house, and more phases, and then the final phase would be completing the school street. Do we know what the phases and the timing of the phases are yet? Like, has Engel given us those details yet?
So that was definitely one of my questions when I met with them, and I am waiting for that.
Okay.
Because I do want to start creating those key milestones and making sure that we're hitting those targets.
Yeah, so the last one about the phase 2 is that Englobe knows and acknowledged that there were stakeholders, residents, ratepayers in the community who wanted to be engaged just to make sure things like the serviceable boundary was properly accounted for in phase 2, and whether we needed to expand the serviceable boundary. And they talked about having a stakeholder engagement session. Do we know when that is happening?
So we did discuss that as well, and it is being, they are working on that now and gathering information for it. They've asked us for some water rates and information like that they can include in their presentation, and then we
So
will
it's coming.
we'll be
Okay,
scheduling
so
something.
looking forward to that. So thank you. Yeah.
So we'll get some more answers.
Yeah, good.
Anyone else have any questions, Councillor Jonah?
No question, just a comment, Linda, you're still wet behind the ears here, as they say, for that level of the presentation tonight, I really appreciate it. I can't wait to see you around it. That's amazing, thank you so much.
Thank you. I do want to point out, all I did was gather information. So, you know, the employees have been working very hard, and I don't know if they get the recognition sometimes that they deserve.
Yeah.
But, and people around this table, you guys have all done a lot of work as well on things. So, this is me gathering information and putting it on a piece of paper. But yeah,
Thank
I
you.
hope to have something a little bit better for reporting that's less bullet points and.
Yeah, and it seems like a lot of information
Yeah.
now, but
Yeah.
there is a lot going on, and in time, we'll start checking those boxes and
Yeah.
things will start to get, and we do recognize that the employees are working hard and spending a lot of time trying to get things done, things happening, so. Councillor Land, any questions? No, appreciate it. Councillor Coates?
Just a couple. Thank you very much for your report. Great to hear it. One thing I'd like to just note on, temporary water in Alma. Before they buy a new pipe to do, there's a couple of, companies that may have some access underground services for one. And I'll get you the other name, Scott Dunfield. That, does the same thing he's been doing in St. John for years and all around Stanton, so they may have access to some of that, but if there's no projects going on, because we were very lucky last year, I don't think we paid anything that he had to.
No.
On that point, their envelope has identified in phase 2, there will be a requirement for that type of piping. So they're trying to purchase it now to use for the temporary water, knowing that they'll have to use it later on in the project as well. But I can certainly reach out to anybody that you thought.
I'll get Scott's number, send it to you.
If we were putting out a tender or something. You'd have to-
Yeah, an envelope would be doing that work for us.
Mhm.
Yeah. Is that it, Councillor Coates?
That's it.
Councillor Ward Russell, any questions?
No questions, but actually was part of my report earlier, but I think it's probably fits in better here. So I just want to personally thank you, Linda, for your communication, your dedication, and your reporting. It's greatly appreciated. It's nice to see that we're moving ahead in less than 4 weeks. It's pretty impressive what you've been able to accomplish. So thank you.
Good, thanks very much, and thank you. Thank you for that. So we'll move on to item number 8B, and these will require motion. So our CEO has circulated a proposal to create a community grants program policy for Fundy Albert. The policy allows for a process that is clear, equitable, and predictable for groups and organizations, and allows the municipality to budget accordingly. So the idea being is that we didn't have a policy per se before, and there's a broad recognition that we need them. So I would accept a motion to adopt the community grants program as was circulated to council. So I would need a motion for that.
I can read that, Mayor.
Go ahead, Councillor Ward Russell.
Perfect. Whereas it is the interest of the Village of Fundy Albert and the various groups and organizations to have a clear, equitable, and predictable community grants program in place, be it resolved that the Council of the Village of Fundy Albert adopt the community grants program policy as presented. Be it further resolved that the community groups and the organizations that have historically been provided grant funding from the municipality to operate their programs will be treated equitably in the 2024 calendar year. I so move.
So moved by Councillor Ward Russell. So seconder on the motion, seconded by Councillor Lamb. Any questions or discussion on the motion? This is an opportunity for comments and questions.
I'd just like to make a statement. I know it's already joked that they're asking for our financials, which I think is a great idea to track the work on accreditation on the other side for. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
Good, thank you. Councillor Coates, any questions?
One time we, mentioned we were gonna put it out for a time period. I think you have,
That's one of the reasons why we're introducing it tonight, is to get it formalized.
I think you have a date to complete it. I thought I read it. Okay, nothing else?
Okay, Councilor Arrow?
Yeah, I have a couple. One of the features of the program is for in-kind grants. So grants that we would be providing to other organizations in the form of donated equipment or services or labor and so forth. I think that we need to make a link between this policy and the one that we recently passed that touches very much into this subject matter. This was the policy that was the use of municipal resources, which included people and equipment for the benefit of third parties. So I think they work together here, but I think this policy needs to acknowledge that that policy is in play and it also governs. Because here, who's got the authority of the in-kind is the CAO.
Which is consistent with
It is,
the other.
right. And so what we wouldn't want is this to somehow trump that. They need to be consistent.
Yeah.
That's the first point. The second one is I think it's important for those who are listening, those who are seeking grants, because this is linked in part to the motion I did in the last meeting to promulgate the policy, have Linda and her team do that, and that's what we're doing here today. And the second part was to immediately announce to the community that the door is open to make applications, and I think that's in here, that you're ready to almost make the website go live and announce to grantees that applications are being accepted. So know that's coming, people. If it's, I don't know, when are you expecting the website to go live if we pass this tonight?
I could press the button as soon as the meeting's over.
Really?
So it's all designed and
Yeah.
it is ready to go. However, we will be reaching out to those groups that have consistently asked in the past so that we knew that they are.
Okay, so thank you.
Okay, Councilor Jonah, any questions? No, Councilor Ward Russell, any questions, comments? So there is a motion on the floor to accept the community grants program as presented. If you're ready for the question, all in favor of the motion signify by stating aye. And so noted that Councilor Ward Russell supports the motion. Opposed, if any? The motion is carried unanimously. So thank you very much. Next is item number 8C, employee policies. Our CAO has circulated a council report form requesting the council approve a number of employee policy related policies and guidelines, including a statement of health and safety responsibility and early and safe return to work, a respectful workplace policy guidelines and definitions, a respectful workplace policy statement, and an employee code of conduct and ethics. So I would accept a motion to adopt the employee policy documents as circulated. So moved by Councilor Land, seconded by Councilor Jonah. Any discussion or questions on the motion? So these are, they would be incorporated in the employee policy manual, but these are items that are necessary. I don't know if you want to add something to that.
No, they will form part of the larger employee manual, but for now they will stand alone. And they are as a result of the workplace assessment that was conducted in the fall. So it was important to get these out to demonstrate to the employees that we've been listening and that this is important.
The only concern I have is that, so the manual that's guided the employees up to now has been the old Hillsborough manual, right?
Correct.
And for everything else that's not covered here, it continues to be the guiding document. Do these new policies and statements in any way contradict that in the areas that it's addressing, to the point that we need to have clear that these now take precedence over the similar or complementary sections in the other manual that is still in play for all other subject areas.
Correct. So procedurally, until such time as we're ready to introduce a new employee policy, the other one will continue to have effect. And when we adopt the new employee policy manual, then there would be the former Village of Hillsborough employee policy that we have been operating under would be repealed.
Right.
It would stop to have effect.
Right.
But maybe that's something that our CAO can have a look at to ensure that, as you point out, that there are no contradictions in terms
And this
of
takes
these
precedence.
statements and that these take precedence.
If I could just mention, the motion should be read first.
Oh, sorry,
Yeah,
forgot about
sorry.
that. I thought we, oh, yes, sorry.
Be resolved that the Village of Fundy Albert approves the health and safety statement, respectfully workplace policy guidelines and definition, respectful workplace policy statement, and the employee's code of conduct and ethics. Thank you.
Okay, and I believe you had seconded that, correct, Councilor John?
Yeah.
Councilor John, sorry about that. Procedurally, that was the correct way to do it.
Sorry.
Thank you for pointing that out, clerk. All right, any other questions on, any other questions in relation
I
to
only
that?
had a question with, where these will be then public documents for the public, like I realize they're guiding the conduct and work and workplace of our employees. But are these also visible to the public so they can see them?
There would be
Yeah,
nothing
there would-
really
I think
preventing
it would
us.
be a good
Certainly,
idea.
the three in
And see-
front of us now, absolutely, because they would have an impact on any dealings and relationships with the public.
Yeah, so
So
I think it's a good idea.
the employee manual, I'd have to reevaluate one.
No, I was really meaning these ones.
Yeah,
Very good.
okay. Any other questions, comments? Council Ward Russell?
Yeah, just wondering, will they be signing these documents, or how will they be acknowledged that they have understood and accepted the policies?
My intent was to have a staff meeting and go over them then, but if council preferred to have state sign that everybody has reviewed them and understand them, we could certainly do that.
I think that would be valuable to ensure that, and in some cases, particularly with the health and safety related ones, that there'd be an annual sign off that they understand, I think would be probably the most appropriate way to do it. Any other comments or questions? Thank you for raising that, Councilor Russell. If not, all in favor of the motion to adopt the employee policy documents as circulated, signify by stating aye. Opposed, if any? The motion is carried unanimously. Item number 8D, which is the municipal office consolidation. So our CAO circulated a council report form requesting that council approve the temporary relocation of administrative personnel to 61 Academy Street in Hillsborough, the costs associated with renovations, and the sale of the municipal office in Riverside, Albert, if and when staff have located there. So I would need a motion to adopt those recommendations, and then we can have conversations.
So moved. There is a recommendation of the recent workplace culture assessment includes the use centralizing administration and whereas centralizing all administrative employees in one location would result in a more effective, efficient workplace. Be it resolved that the council approves the relocation of all administrative personnel on a temporary basis to 61 Academy Street, Hillsborough, New Brunswick. Be it also resolved that the council authorize the chief administration officer to proceed with renovations to 61 Academy Street at an estimated cost of $50,000. Be it also resolved that the council authorizes the sale of the assets located at 58-823 King Street, Riverside, Albert, New Brunswick, once the relocation of the personnel from that location is complete.
So moved by Councillor Coates. Is there a seconder on that motion? So seconded by Councillor Jones. Now we can have comments or discussions. Any questions or comments? So we'll start with Councillor Coates, since you moved.
I take it, Horizon Health has never got back to you, or that's dead.
I can comment on that maybe after a little bit, but maybe I'll provide our CAO an opportunity to maybe provide a little bit of context. So that if anybody has, because I just kind of skimmed over the surface about what this is about, she may have something to add.
I don't really have too much more to add than what was put in the briefing note, but it is imperative that the team is all in one spot. It's very difficult. There's a duplication of work. There's isolation of employees. So having everybody in one place is really important, and finding a place quickly is difficult. What we were looking at with the building at 61 Academy is just the house side of it. We don't need all of it. We are just looking at the one side, and it just needs a little bit of sprucing up right now, I think. The other side of it maybe is has a different story, but the house part of it seems to be okay for what we need it for. So we would be looking at things like, painting it and getting the phones moved over. But a lot of that cost is the back needs to have some parking. So we would have to clear out that backyard a little bit to put some parking in order for us to use it. So the majority of the cost of that is for that particular piece.
Correct. And so to answer your question, Councilor Coates, the issue with the relocation of the Hillsborough satellite office to 61 Academy on the office side is not completely, it's moving along at a snail's pace, I guess, the best way that you could describe it. And we, the CAO and I actually have a meeting with them next February 12th, which is next Tuesday, to have a conversation. They're just looking for some additional information and some additional costs and what their rent would be and so on. So we're having continuing discussions. But there's something that may kind of play into the space available. The CAO and I will have that conversation with them. Any other questions, Councilor Arrow? Did you have any questions? Sure.
First off, I would actually propose an amendment to this motion. I'll lead up to why, and I will propose that. Is I noticed that the office consolidation that we're addressing here is on a temporary basis, and I get that. In part because it's temporary, and in part because I'm still not really sure, I don't think council's really sure where our endpoint that we're aiming for is in terms of where to consolidate. I think it is premature to have the sale of the Riverside Albert office be part of this. So I'm in favor of this motion, minus be it resolved that council authorizes the sale of the asset located at 5823 King Street, Riverside, Albert, New Brunswick, once the relocation of personnel from that location is complete. I do not believe that that is a wise thing for us to do tonight.
Okay, can you propose an
Yes.
exact wording,
Yes.
which would be the removal of? So it would be an amendment to remove.
Just remove that one final paragraph, be it resolved that I read.
Okay.
So that's the first point. The second is just a question. And in the report form that we received,
Perhaps, Councillor, the best way to approach this
Yeah.
would be to address the amendment.
Yes, please.
Address the amendment, so I
Okay,
need
that's the amendment.
a seconder to amend the motion to remove that sale of 5823 King Street. Is there a seconder on that motion? So if there's no seconder on the motion, the motion stands. Now your point.
okay. By vacating the existing municipal office in Hillsborough, Linda, you correctly note that that frees up space and you're proposing that it be handed or turned over to the library, the public library, which actually I am supportive. Is that part of the intent that we would do that? Because you go on to talk about it's the 60th anniversary of the New Brunswick Public Library system, which is true. And I know that they're trying to celebrate, and I think this would, they'd be probably very happy to hear this news. I'm wondering, A, is that, are we committing to that right now? And B, linked to that, is there a cost associated with that? Because my understanding of how it works with the libraries is the municipality is on the hook, so to speak, or it has an obligation to provide membership to the board, which we do, and to provide the facility.
Right.
So if we're going to expand the facility, presumably, you know, that just in the same, much the same way that there's not a particularly expensive renovation required at 61 Academy, there's a renovation required to make the vacated space library-like. Is that something that we, you know,
That we could potentially be on the hook for?
yeah,
Quite likely.
yeah. And again, I'm actually supportive of that, but I wonder, do we need to be doing that now as part of this?
It can complicate things,
Yeah.
in my view. It would complicate things if we start putting too many conditions on it. I think the best approach would be just to provide the approval to do this. Then look at and have conversations with the library in terms of what needs to be done. Develop a costing for it, because right now we have no idea what the cost would be, and we would have to budget for that accordingly. So I think, you know, take one step at a time. We need to bring our staff together. That's the impetus behind this whole thing, is to bring our staff together so we have a much more cohesive group and so on.
So I'm sitting with somebody next turn also. I know we should state where we're at. I'm supportive of actually this, but I'll probably vote against it because I still do not believe it should be selling right away.
Okay.
I understood as part of the 2024 budget deliberations, there was funding requested for the library for certain items. And my idea or my thought was that that would be somewhat sufficient to expand into the space that we have. We don't have a lot of space on the other side of that hallway. So my thought was they could put either an office in there, maybe that computer that they use for public use, and the boardroom could be used for their crafts and stuff that they normally do on the floor right now. So I didn't think that there would be a lot of additional costs outside of that 2024 budget request.
Yeah. All right, Councilor Land.
I agree, we need whatever in one office, that's much more efficient, we can't be jumping back and up and down the road, transferring papers and all that kind of stuff. My issue is the cost of upgrading 61 Academy. I think we could upgrade the current building that we're in now and move the library to 61 Academy and be much more efficient. You wouldn't need the parking lot changed if we move the library up there, because there's parking there for 4, 5, 6 cars possibly. And you have parking where you're at the main office now. Take the library, all that area where we put. You could subdivide that into small cubicles or small rooms even. And I think there'd be enough room there to accommodate all the staff that we need to put in there. So I agree we need to be in one place for sure. And I also agree we need to sell the building Alma. I think there's some potential.
Riverside House.
Riverside House, sorry. And but I think that we should look at also transforming the office that you are now into the main spot, because the parking's already there. And we wouldn't have to spend that extra capital up at 61 Academy. Just my thoughts.
Okay. So, and as Councilor Arrow pointed out, he is opposed to the motion for that reason. Are you opposed to this motion on the basis that you feel something else should be done?
I am.
Okay. So, anyone else have any comments to provide?
Linda, did you look at possibly using the existing office? Did you putting, wrap your head around it, and they just couldn't wrap your head enough, so.
So we did look at using the current office to be all of ours and moving the library. However, the library has different issues with accessibility, and they wouldn't use the upstairs to that house at all. It would just be the main floor, because they wouldn't be able to have, there's no accessibility on the second story. So there would be other things that would be required in order for the library to move in there, and we thought that the easiest and most affordable would be for us to move. So it definitely was something that was considered. And I don't have, it was conversations, it's not figures on paper.
Does that answer your question?
There's different standards for the.
Okay, Councillor Coates, any questions? Councillor Ward Russell, any questions or comments?
Yeah, this is a little harder one to acknowledge, but I think I would have to follow through with the CEO and let her recommendation stand.
Okay, thank you. And from my perspective, I think we need to do something urgently to get staff together. And this is a temporary measure, because as part of the strategic planning process, the idea is to find a new home for all administration and council. Correct? Go ahead, Councillor Lang.
If we go ahead with this motion and everything gets passed, can we take the other part of the office building right now and make it possible to get some revenue? Because we're still gonna have the same costs, right, in that building they're operating with, if the library gets all of them. So we rather than say an office space on that side, that would, bring some money into.
Well, our CAO is providing recommendations, so. Yeah. Anything's possible, but we'll leave that up to the discretion of the CAO, but the motion as presented stands. Well, all right, any other questions, comments? So on the motion as was presented, including the sale of 5823 King Street in Riverside, Albert, signify by stating aye. Opposed, if any. So Councillor Arrow is noted as opposing. Councillor Ward Russell, you're in favor? Okay, so the motion is adopted. Thank you very much. Item number 8E, which is social media policy. Our CAO circulated a council report form requesting the approval of a social media policy for the Village of Fundy Albert. I would accept a motion to adopt the social media policy as presented by the CAO.
Be it resolved that the Village of Fundy Albert social media policy be approved as presented.
So moved by Councillor Jonah. Is there a seconder on that motion? Seconded by Councillor Coates. Any questions on the motion? So this is a motion that would impact our ability to manage social media, if I understand correctly, our ability to manage social media, and also provides for some sense of decorum for the users of our social media.
My only comment, just in terms of sort of a summary or synopsis, because this was discussed, the subject, not this policy, but the subject of social media policy, was discussed at the last committee of the whole meeting. We were talking there about things like shutting down the ability to, in other words, it would only be a one-way tool out. And there were, I personally received some feedback from the community on that. Just to recap here, Linda, that the proposed policy here, as I understand it, it's actually comprehensive in the sense that it's addressing not only the public and how they interact with all of our social media outlets, but our employees and our staff on how they engage and work with and manage social media and the website. I think that's a good thing that it's addressing both. And to be clear, this is allowing there to be commenting, continuing to allow the current practice of respectful commenting inbound.
Right.
Yeah, okay. So I'm prepared to support this.
Councillor Jonah?
One of the concerns, Linda, you had mentioned at the council meeting in regards to a social media account, that there was no way to manage it or keep track of it during the weekends. Has that been rectified?
It is not, in my research, it's not something that's normally done, right? So it is it's social media. If turning it off means that we can be perceived as being unwilling to cooperate or unresponsive. We want people to be able to comment on things. We can get a pulse on what's happening. We can maybe find ideas or different programs that we need to implement by looking through the comments. So turning them off because there may be one or two bad comments in there really kind of would be as a detriment, I think, to council and to the Village of Fundy Albert. So there is no solution to if there's comments on a Friday night at midnight that nobody's looking at it until Monday morning. It's just the nature of the beast, I believe, would be the best way to put it.
As long as folks know that ahead of time.
That would be my
Not their
concern.
And we will then ban people if they are not playing by the rules, and we're gonna clearly post the rules. That's the new part in the banner of the Facebook page. This is what the new rules are. I've put them as the annex to that policy, which I might say is the policy that was presented. I didn't really change too much on the policy. I just adopted a little bit here and there, but really the banner of what the rules are and expecting people to abide by those rules. And if we do end up banning somebody, the onus is on them to come back and ask us to put them back on. We're not going to keep a logbook of 6 months from now, you know, Emily gets to be reinstated. They can ask to come back on the page. We can have a conversation, see if they've changed their ways, if they think they're going to do it again, and make a decision on a case by case basis.
Perfect, that was my own concern, and I will be supporting this motion.
Okay, Councilor Ward Russell, any comments?
No comments, and greatly appreciate your feedback on this one.
Great, thank you. Councilor Land,
Oh, I suppose.
Councilor Coates? No. And you're being quite modest when you say you changed it. You did a good job. Thank you very much. So on the motion to adopt the social media policy as presented, signify by stating aye. Opposed, if any? Motion's adopted unanimously. Item 8F, Harvey Hall request. The Harvey Hall Board of Directors is requesting a letter of support from the municipality in their efforts to apply for grant funding to produce a story about Molly Pool of Alma. An authorization through a resolution of council is required. So if someone would be so kind as to read that, please.
I can read that, Mayor.
Well, Councilor Arrow is going to read it there. Thanks for.
I move that the Village of Fundy Albert approve Harvey Hall's request to issue a letter of support in relation to their application for grant funding for their production of Calm Captain, a story about Molly Cool's life.
So moved by Councilor Arrow, seconded by Councilor Coates. Any discussion on the motion?
I would like just to make it clear that this motion is pertaining only to council providing a letter of support in relation to Harvey Hall's application to another body for grant funding. This is not approving any grant funding from us. Yeah.
Yes. Any other comments or questions? Not all in favor, signify by stating aye. Opposed, if any? Motion's adopted unanimously. Thank you very much. Item number 8G. The Albert County Chamber of Commerce we've received a request from the Albert County Chamber of Commerce to council to appoint someone on their board of directors. They feel strongly that it's important for our communities to be well represented at our meetings, and the Village of Fundy Albert is certainly a critical ally. So they're looking for someone. So I don't know, I provided an email to that effect. So I don't know if there's someone right at the moment that's interested in that. If not, I'll give you some time to think about it and then we can bring it back up. But they are looking for a member of council to sit on their board of directors.
I'm not willing to say yes tonight. Maybe give me a little bit of time. That's something I would be interested in.
Okay.
But I'm not going to commit tonight though.
All right. So it was just as an introduction and it just came in within the last day or so. So Councilor Jones is going to give it some thought. All right, item number 9 on the agenda is bylaws. There are no bylaws to present this evening. Item number 10 is mayor and councillor statements and inquiries. Councilor Ward Russell, I'm going to start with you if you don't mind.
Perfect. So I did already acknowledge the CEO's leadership, so that was part of my opening remarks. Just I guess the only other thing that I'd like to add would be, as you're aware, there's been a ongoing process with the lagoon formation, I guess, in the Greensboro subdivision. I've been currently sitting on, I'm gonna call it government. And I guess at this point, I would ask our CEO to participate and attend those meetings on behalf of Village of Fundy Albert.
Okay,
And once those are formed, I believe we're scheduled to have a meeting in early February. So I will keep you posted with the chosen date, and hopefully that will fit your schedule. That's all for me.
great. Thank you very much. Council Lord Russell, Council Arrow.
Just a couple of things here. First off, I'd like to just shout out kudos for the Alma Rink ice team that has kept ice on the outdoor rink here in Alma for quite a few days here, actually, this winter. It's amazing how much skating's been going on there. So I know it's a tough job keeping it going, but it's been going. So I don't think it's going tonight, but good job to all that whole team who's working on that. That's good. A reminder, Fundy Park actually did alert me that they didn't have, you know how often I will have a report from Fundy Park of the latest things. They did alert me today that they had no report for this month. They will for next month. But there is a reminder that on February 8th, most Thursday at 8 a.m. is the opening of the reservation period for Fundy Park for the season. Myself as the liaison with Fundy Park and Mayor Rochon and Linda as our CEO, we are meeting with Fundy Park management on February 14th. And I think it's worthwhile saying, at least just in general terms, that we as council did meet with the South Anglophone East, the school district, to try and work out relationship, a memorandum of understanding. We're in the early stages of that between us and them, which would allow the residents of Fundy Albert to utilize the facilities of the Anglophone East school district, so the fields and the school, with the municipality providing some labor and other things in return. And so that's underway. And I think that's a good thing. I've had comments from the community wondering about the availability of the school facility. So we're certainly moving in that direction. I think it's good. So thank you.
That's it?
Yeah.
All right. Councillor Jonah.
A couple things too, just to echo Council Arrow. I've been watching the, what do you call it, ice team, on social media, and, there's a ton of work going in there, and just want to thank them and congratulate them on such a wonderful thing down here, because it's, I remember trying to make rinks for my kids, and it's not fun, it's not an easy task, so it's good, kudos to them. Second thing, I have been approached, by a resident in Hillsborough that is interested in chairing and kind of revitalizing the rec council in Hillsborough. She has a bit of a team put behind her. She had requested that I would be the liaison between the council and the rec council in Hillsborough. One of the first things that they would like to do is go after funding to do the dog park that has eluded us in Hillsborough for a while. So I just want to know, you know, what our next steps would be. Do we need to have a meeting with the council, or how?
Pass the person's information, the details to our chief administrative officer, and she can reach out to and consider that in the overall assessment. That
I thought you were gonna say then I wouldn't have to do that anymore.
it's an option, right?
Okay, I will put her in touch with Linda and we'll go from there.
Okay.
She's very down low, and the team behind her is very down low. They've got a lot of, they have quite a vision what they'd like to see happen, and it's a good team. So I think that's very positive for the village. Good. And that's all I have.
Good, thank you. Councillor Lamb.
Just have one thing here in the county.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Coates.
In my quest to get answers from the government on taxation on pits and that, it's coming along. I finally got the right people working on it, and they're gonna look at it and see, to me, an $8,000 for 500 acres of land have value as woodland, and they're running a pit of it and hauling 20 trucks a day in gravel. So they said it would go in as not industrial heavy equipment or heavy tax, but it's the same rate as unoccupied business. So they're looking at it and they're gonna have an assessment and reassessment on it. That's all.
All right, thank you. I do have a couple of things. So on January 30th, I attended the meeting of the Southeast Regional Service Commission Transportation Committee to look at ways to increase the number of volunteer drivers for the Urban Rural Rides program. Urban Rural Rides relies heavily on volunteer drivers to deliver its program, which focuses on providing ride services to medical appointments for those who don't have a vehicle or access to them. They are in need of additional volunteer drivers, so if anyone knows someone who is looking to volunteer for a worthy cause, please reach out and contact them. And I'll note that the first probably ride service that ever existed started right here in Alma, which was Telluride, Albert County, I believe was the name. So kudos to the organizers, because now this is spreading right throughout the province. And so, but they are in pretty desperate need of drivers. On January 30th, attended the Southeast Regional Service Commission Board meeting with Councillor Arrow, where there were two presentations. One was in relation to a study being conducted in relation to population trends and growth in municipalities in the Southeast region. When complete, each municipality, including ours, will be profiled under 3 scenarios, including population decline, modest population growth, and strong population growth. There was a second presentation as well. It's in relation to work being done to look at cost sharing possibilities with regional sports, recreation, and cultural facilities, including outdoor facilities. And I got a commitment from the people who are doing the study that rural New Brunswick is going to be considered in that study as well. On January 31st, they held a discussion with the CEO of the Southeast Regional Service Commission as it relates to the potential for the development of a regional emergency planning template and or a regional approach to emergency planning. Work by the Southeast Regional Service Commission Public Safety Committee, of which I'm the chair, will likely result in an assessment of emergency preparedness readiness and recommendations for smaller communities to improve their ability to respond in times of emergencies. There's a broad recognition that as smaller communities, we have less capabilities than would a large municipal center. So they're looking at maybe being able to collaborate between smaller municipalities to see if we can improve our ability to respond to emergencies, because it's not a question of if, it's a question of when there will be a demand, and a significant one. So there's some progress being made. And that's all I had.
Would you let me?
Sure, absolutely.
You reminded me of one thing and I forgot one thing. The thing I forgot in mine is the Fundy Frolic, February Frolic, pardon me, is happening February 10 to 19, I believe, and Micah, they should visit the Friends of Fundy website for full details. So that, and we've seen the banners up throughout Fundy Albert.
Yes.
The other one to do with public transportation, I think it's also worth remembering that even before we had the rural rides, long before I was in Albert County, there was the Fundy Flyer,
I remember.
a bus service that went from end to end. And I personally am a huge champion that we should be pushing for Fundy Flyer 2. As we start to imagine the vision and the future of Fundy Albert, and we're talking to the Southeast Regional Service Commission transportation guys, we should be visioning Fundy Flyer 2.
I've already put that bug in your ear.
Yeah, I think it would be amazing.
Yeah.
Year-round bus service.
I agree, John. No question.
Yeah.
Good. Thank you very much. Next on the agenda is notices of motions and resolutions. So there are a number of important resolutions that need to be adopted. The first is a Municipal Capital Borrowing Board application for the Riverside Albert Fire Department tanker pumper. In order to proceed with the purchase of a much-needed fire truck for the Riverside Albert Volunteer Fire Department, we require an application to the Municipal Capital Borrowing Board. This requires a resolution of council, so if someone would be so kind as to read that.
Want me to jump in this time?
Council Land is here, so go ahead.
Whereas Riverside Albert Fire Station's main tanker pumper is due for replacement, and whereas the municipality of Fundy Albert must submit an application for authorization to borrow for a capital expense for the following term and amount. Protection Services, the tanker pumper interim financing, $800,000 for a 4-year term. The tanker pumper, $800,000 on a 15-year term. Be it resolved that municipality of Fundy Albert submit to the Municipal Capital Borrowing Board an application for authorization to borrow for a capital expense for the above term and amount.
So moved by Council Land. Is there a seconder on that motion? Seconded by Councillor Arrow. Any questions or discussions on the motion? So there's two things, really. One is interim financing for the purchase, and then secondly is the actual borrowing for that longer term for the fire truck.
And why the two? This I don't, for the next one that's coming about the water, I get it. Why the two? Because sometimes the monies are not, when it's a grant provided by another level of government, their grant doesn't come at the beginning, so we need to borrow all the money up front. We pay it out and eventually we get their money later. So I get that part, but in this case, there's no monies coming from anywhere else, right? It's all us, Fundy Albert. So why is there this 4-year interim?
I guess the only answer I would have to that question, Councillor Arrow, is that we should be asking that question of our treasurer. There may be a requirement for us to, once the tender is adopted, to make payments and then get reimbursed through the Municipal Capital Borrowing Board project.
We've got a truck.
Yeah, exactly. So I would have to rely on our treasurers.
Yeah, and I will have to ask, I think it does have something to do with it takes time to build a fire truck. So that might factor into it as well.
Yeah.
So the 4-year interim and the 15-year non-interim, these are. If the 800,000 is actually being paid off over 15 years, is that not correct? It's not 19
Correct.
years.
It's
Okay,
correct.
15 years, which that does add up to the amount that is in our budget for 2024. We approved the financing charge of basically this amount.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Any other questions, comments? Councillor Ward Russell, any comments or questions? So on the, if we're ready for the question, on the motion to proceed with the application to the Municipal Capital Borrowing Board, all in favor of the motion signify by stating aye. Opposed, if any? Motion's adopted unanimously. Thank you. Item number 11B. Again, Municipal Capital Borrowing Board, this time for the Alma Well and Infrastructure Phase 2. So in order to proceed with Phase 2 of the Alma Well and Infrastructure Project, we require an application to the Municipal Capital Borrowing Board for interim financing totaling $12.24 million and authority for borrowing in the amount of $820,000 for the municipality's share of the costs. If someone would be so kind as to read the motion.
I'll do that. So whereas the new municipal well and related infrastructure of Phase 1 passed the 72-hour pump test, and whereas the municipality is now ready to start Phase 2, and whereas the municipality of Fundy Albert must submit an application for authorization to borrow for a capital expense for the following term and amount. An amount of $12,240,000, which is interim financing for the new municipal well and related infrastructure. known as phase 2, under environmental health services for 4 years. And then the the Fundy Albert share for the new municipal well and related infrastructure, phase 2, which is 820,000 for 30 years. Therefore, be it resolved, the municipality of Fundy Albert submit to the Municipal Capital Borrowing Board an application for authorization to borrow for a capital expense for the above term and amount.
So moved by Councillor Arrow, seconded by Councillor Coates. Any discussion or questions on the motion? Not, all in favor signify by stating aye. Opposed, if any? The motion is adopted unanimously. The next item is, which is 11C, is a new bank account. So the current bank account for the Hillsborough Rec Council, which is under the umbrella of the former Village of Hillsborough, must be closed. In order to continue dispersing funds, a new account must be opened, which will be separate from the Village of Fundy Albert accounts. A resolution of council is required for this to happen.
Whereas all accounts under the former Village of Hillsborough must be closed, and whereas the current bank account for the Hillsborough Recreation Council is under the umbrella of the former Village of Hillsborough. And whereas the Hillsborough Recreation Council is a separate entity, apart from the Village of Fundy Albert, and cannot remain under the umbrella of the Village of Fundy Albert. Be it resolved that a new bank account be opened for the Hillsborough Recreation Council and the Canadian Imperial Bank of Commerce, CIBC, pending the completion of a review being conducted by the Chief Administrative Officer.
So moved by Councillor Jones. Is there a second on that motion? Seconder on the motion?
Yeah.
Seconded by Councillor Aaron. Any discussion on the motion? Yes, oh, Councillor Lamb first.
Who that bank account?
Right now,
No. After, when it goes separate.
when it goes separate, it would still be administered through the office. Yeah, it's just, it has to be a separate account. What we don't want is, we don't want any of the disbursements to come from the general operating account, because then it's mixing apples and oranges. And there needs to be a clear delineation. Right now, the account is still showing under the former Village of Hillsborough, CIBC. They require that account to be closed and a new one to be opened so that it is separate. It is a separate entity, so it needs to be kept separate. That is pending the review being conducted by our Chief Administrator. So, Councillor Arrow, you have a question?
Yeah, the wording in the third whereas. I was struggling with. It says, whereas the Hillsborough Rec Council is a separate entity. Usually if you use a part, it's apart from something, not part of something. It's like, what are we trying to say? That the Rec Council is an entity on its own. It is a not-for-profit. I believe we've established that. But it is, I made a motion that was adopted at the last meeting that said that it was owned and operated essentially by the village. It is a separate entity.
Correct.
But somehow, right now, it is, counter to what it says here, it is under the umbrella of the municipality, because this bank account is going to be opened by the municipality staff acting as municipal employees.
Under the name of the Hillsborough Rec Council, not the Village of Fundy Albert.
Right, but, so I can probably live with this, because the bank account, if I understand correctly, is to be used to hold the monies that are there in the Hillsborough Rec Council. For instance, the grant that might have been received by Literacy Express that we knew about.
Correct.
Perhaps there's other amounts, I'm not sure, because we've never really been aware what was there. But it's this new bank account's gonna hold that while the CAO completes the review. And really, at that point, if we decide to somehow maintain this with a link to the municipality, I'm assuming at that point, we'll talk about how we're gonna have financial oversight of this bank account as a council.
Right.
Okay,
You raise a good point though, Councillor Arrow, and that's the wording of that third portion of the motion. It should be apart from, you're correct, apart from and not a part of. So if you would like to make a suggestion to amend that,
yeah.
to strike of and replace
Is that a friendly amendment?
If it's agreed, yes.
by the mover and
By
second.
Councillor Jonah and yourself, yeah.
If you're in agreement with that, Councillor,
John.
it was Councillor Jonah who moved,
Yeah.
was it Councillor Coates who seconded?
Arrow.
Or Councillor Arrow second? You're okay with that?
Yeah.
Yeah, all right. So on the motion as it was, as amended, all in favor of the motion signify by stating aye.
Aye.
Opposed, if any, the motion's carried unanimously. So thank you very much. The last motion, or not the last, second last motion is, the Shoreline Trail Hillsborough segment. So the former Village of Hillsborough had received funding from Infrastructure Canada to do work on the Hillsborough segment of the Shoreline Trail. This was while the former Village of Fundy Albert was still an entity. And so there was an application and there was a resolution at the time, but a resolution is required from the Village of Fundy Albert to formalize the agreement with the Government of Canada because of the name change from Village of Hillsborough to the Village of Fundy Albert. So I would require a motion to that effect. So go ahead, Councillor Land.
I move to approve and authorize the execution of an agreement between the Village of Fundy Albert and His Majesty the King in Right of Canada, as represented by the Minister of Infrastructure and Communities for the Shoreline Trail, Hillsborough segment. Now therefore, the Council of the Village of Hillsborough, now therefore, the Council of the Village of Fundy Albert hereby authorizes and approves the Village of Fundy Albert clerk to authorize and execute the said agreement on behalf of the Village of Fundy Albert.
So moved by Councillor Land. Is there a second on the motion? Seconded by Councillor Jonah. Any discussion or questions on the motion? If not, all in favor signify by stating aye. Opposed, if any, motion's carried unanimously. The last one, disposition of land. Forestdale Homes is in need of land to develop affordable housing options for their employees. Their ability to serve the clients is restricted by availability of housing. They have created a nonprofit organization and have approached the municipality to provide land in Riverside, Albert. A resolution of council is required for this to occur. Would someone read that motion, please?
Whereas Forestdale Home Inc. has a shortage of housing available for its personnel, and this is impacting their ability to provide nursing home care in the community. And whereas the Forestdale Home Inc. newly created Fundy Albert Housing is in need of land to construct affordable housing options in the community of Fundy Albert. And whereas it is in the interest of the Village of Fundy Albert to partner with Fundy Albert Housing and their endeavor to develop housing, be it resolved that the Village of Fundy Albert agreed to donate a parcel of land on Water Street, Riverside, Albert, with PID 017666382 to Fundy Albert Housing. Be it further resolved that Fundy Albert Housing will be responsible to ensure that the land can develop for the stated purpose and will be responsible for all costs necessary to obtain title to the parcel of land for PID 017666382. Be it further resolved that Fundy Albert Housing will have until December 31st, 2024 to begin development of housing on the parcel of land. Failure to do so will result in Fundy Albert Housing agreeing to return parts of the land back to the Village of Fundy Albert.
So moved by Councillor Jonah. Is there a seconder on that motion? Seconded by Councillor Coates. Any discussion on the motion?
Yeah, I think we should, there's a few things I think we need to just make sure
Clarify.
that we're all clear,
Yes.
or at least I'm clear. So the granting of land, is what we're talking about here. And so it's important to realize that the land that's being granted is currently owned by the municipality of Fundy Albert, formerly the municipality of Riverside Albert, right?
Correct.
Right, and the land in question is actually a piece of land that abuts is beside the land for which Riverside Albert Consolidated School is located. It's on the same side of the road, just west of Riverside Albert Consolidated School. Am I right in my understanding that who we're granting it to is Forest Dale Home Inc., who operates, owns and operates Forest Dale Nursing Home.
Mhm.
And the newly created Fundy Albert Housing, I'm not sure what it is, but I'm understanding it to be a nonprofit organization that was set up by the board of Forest Dale Home Inc. Correct. Okay.
Mhm.
I think it's important, at least my understanding of what we're agreeing to here is in the third paragraph, it says, whereas it is in the interests of the Village of Fundy Albert to partner with Fundy Albert Housing in their endeavor to develop housing. The partnering is really us granting them this land. Right. There's no other formal partnership that we're entering into here. We may in the future, but that's the partnering here is to assist them in their development by granting them land that happens to be owned by the municipality. Correct. Okay, very good. I would support this.
Any other comments or questions? Councilor Ward Russell? Okay, on the question, all in favor of the motion signify by stating aye. Opposed, if any, the motion's carried unanimously. Thank you. So that is all for item number 11. Item number 12, which is public comments and statements. Is there anyone attending here who would like to speak? Yes.
Questions count as well? Okay.
We'll see if we can maybe answer.
On transportation. Mayor Rochon, you would have been there. Region 7 had a presentation done by Kelly Taylor and Kirsten Short,
Mhm.
asking the region to support urban rural rides application to, I think, the federal government for a number of vehicles that would then be used up and down the amalgamated area.
Right.
Has there been any update on that? Was the funding ever approved? Or?
I believe the federal government had approved their application, but it was, I'm going from memory here, so cut me a little bit of slack. But I believe the application was supported by the Southeast Regional Service Commission. In fact, I believe it was the Service Commission who submitted the application on behalf of Urban Rural Rides. And I believe the application was approved, but like the initial application, but there has been no decision made by the board of directors, and that has to happen in order for those ability vehicles to actually be purchased. Because some board members at the time, when it was approved by the board, there was some concern over, yes, it was a really good thing to do, but then what about down the road when those vehicles needed to be replaced? Because we were getting them, they're virtually like $108,000 a piece, and we were getting them for something like $13,000. So the concern was, it's all fine and dandy to purchase them now, but what happens 10 years down the road or 7 years down the road when they need to be replaced? So there has not been a formal, it's never come back to the Southeast Regional Service Commission Board. We sit on that board for a formal decision in terms of where that's going.
Well, if I could just say, there are electric plugs at the park. There's one in Hillsborough, a couple of Hopewell Rocks. And it would be a great source for your funding flyer fleet. Say that a few times.
Okay.
Can we seek to bring that back to the board?
Well, we could, it's on the table at the board, but we can ask them to bring it back to the table. Now, I believe the vehicles, they're not the plug-in hybrids. I believe they were just hybrid vehicles.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, so if they're just hybrid vehicles, like the location for plugins is not that important. But each one of the entities at the time, which Fundy Albert would have been an entity, would have been entitled to have one of these vehicles. And then we'd have to find a place to put it, because they're not the type of vehicles you just want to leave outside. So, but your point's taken, Council. We can ask the board to see if where that whole issue is going. But my understanding is it was approved by the federal government, but now it's just kind of sitting. But there are many things going on right now with urban rural rides with the transportation committee. There's the whole issue of regional transportation is it's quite a big monster. And the urban rural rides component of it is just one part of that. I was at that session, and the whole purpose of the session was to brainstorm around how to increase the number of volunteer drivers that they recruit. And there's challenges. I mean, they are a growing organization, but they only have a certain capacity to accept applications and process the applications and then get people trained to be able to do the work. My wife is a volunteer driver with Urban Rural Rides. And, it took quite a bit of time from the time she applied to the time that she was actually approved to be able to start driving. So there's certainly some struggles. But we'll bring that notion of the vehicles back to the.
If anyone else wants to.
Any other? Mr. Warnick?
Marvelous CAO report. Tremendous progress in a very short period of time. Question: do you feel like your tenders are getting enough response from the responding communities, contractors, the people that you're trying to target?
In particular, which ones are you talking about, the water project ones or the others that you have? The other ones are, they're relatively newly posted. I'd have to follow up on that and find out what kind of, I know the strategic plan one has received a lot of applications, but the shoreline trail, I think, is fairly new. I don't think there's been a lot of hits on that one right now. And I'd have to get back to you on the third, and I'm not sure.
Let's have a chat in a few days. Okay. I had a few rabbits to pull out of that for you.
Okay.
I know the shoreline trail one's been less than a week.
Yeah, it was just, I think
The end of the week last week. Okay.
Could I, just on that, could I ask that when we put out tenders, that the council be alerted that a tender has gone out? Because I didn't realize that we actually had some of these tenders out. You could say, hey, John, you should be going there, but it would be nice that as soon as you put one out, just alert us. That, so, I would appreciate that.
I know, because I'm the one who's posting them on the website.
Okay.
But we're working on the website side of it. Yes, Mr. McConnell?
On the website, it's great that policies are gonna go up. Could I ask or suggest that some little thumbnail sketch of how circular materials will, or if it has an impact on curbside, because I heard the presentation, I think it was a gentleman from Eco 360. I didn't really understand his presentation. I don't think he even could answer all of your questions, and you had about 2 days to make a decision, and now I know you've decided to opt in. What does that mean for curbside people in Fundy Albert?
So I can answer that because I've sat in on about it, probably close to 6 or 7 of those meetings. Now, the information with circular materials is evolving. And we find out new information every day. We found some new information out yesterday, which has been shared, and they're looking for some information now. My understanding and the reason why this council opted in is that there was going to be little, if no impact to curbside users. So in other words, for all of Fundy Albert, there wouldn't be a second collection day. It wouldn't be anything different than what they're currently doing. That's the assumption under which, and the information we had at the time, was that that was going to be the case. If we had it opted out, and the opt-in, opt-out can be a little confusing, but opting in means we will look after it through the Southeast Regional Service Commission. Had we opted out, Circular Materials would have done it all for us, and it was out of our control. So it could have resulted in 2 separate collection days. And more importantly, for those of us who are environmentally minded, it would result in more trash going to the landfill. Because there's only certain things that they would accept. Unlike today, in the blue bag, they accept a pretty broad range of materials.
So opting in for Fundy Albert really means Fundy Albert has opted into Eco 360 Region 7.
Continuing with it.
Rather, it's confusing wording, because
Yeah, I know.
somebody's bringing a presentation to you, you think you're opting into circular material, okay.
Yeah, it sounds counterintuitive, but it's not. It's opting in means nothing will change.
And I will just add to that, we completed all the onboarding documents for it, and in May, there's supposed to be information pieces that will be distributed, so we're waiting for those. There should be 1-pagers and more things that we can give to people to understand.
And there will be a subsidy paid to Fundy Albert by Circular Materials. What the implications are, what the use of that funding will be for, will be determined by conversations with the Southeast Regional Service Commission. Because what comes along with the responsibility for that is education. And so whether or not some of that funding would have to be paid to the Service Commission to do that education piece, remains to be seen. But had we not done anything, it was totally outside of our control.
Or if you have an environmentally friendly vehicle, you can have a reserve to do the upkeep on your funding flyer too.
Right.
So I have 2 more quick questions.
Sure.
I'm not wonderful with east, west, south, north. So west of the school, does that mean any development there would have an impact on the hiking trail?
West of the.
For the staff housing project for
Mhm.
Forestdale. So west of the school, I think would be towards the store.
It's actually south, yeah, it would be south of the school towards the store. Yeah,
So, but it won't have any impact on the hiking trail behind. Okay.
it would be no different than the Riverside Consolidated School.
Okay. And my last question, and I guess it's just a reminder, when we were talking water for years and years, Englobe committed to providing workups or pricing to have water meters when the new system goes in. So I really don't want that to be forgotten.
No, it's in their statement,
Okay,
but it needs to be fleshed out further.
yeah. And they said they would do all that work and bring it to council.
By the way, I'm just looking at the map of the PID, and I can see this is where the Forestdale, this right of way, the trail, which is the old rail bed, is clearly in front of the property. In between the road and the property is the trail.
Yeah.
I guess there's obviously the road or the driveway will need to cross it.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any other comments or statements? If not, we do have some closed session items. So I will accept a motion from council to move into closed session. So moved by Councilor Land, seconded by Councilor Jonah. Any questions on the motion? All in favor signify by stating aye. Opposed, if any, motion's carried unanimously. Thank you everyone for attending and have yourself a good evening. I will stop the recording.